At the Mother's Day lunch, every seat had a name, except mine. Sorry, Mom. We didn't confirm you as a guest. I left a letter under the centerpiece with a name she never expected to see. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I stood frozen at the entrance of Nathan and Stella's dining room, my Mother's Day gift clutched tightly in my hands. The table was beautifully set cream-colored tablecloth, polished silverware, and a stunning flower arrangement in the center. 7 place settings, each with neatly folded napkins and name cards. I scanned them twice, my heart sinking with each name I read. Nathan, Stella, James and Patricia, Stella's parents, Aunt Helen, Uncle George, Stella's sister Megan. There was no place for me. Mom! Nathan's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of surprise and discomfort. I didn't expect you. I tried to keep my voice steady. It's Mother's Day. I got your text about lunch at 1 o'clock. Nathan glanced at Stella, who was arranging appetizers on a serving tray. She looked up, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Oh, Elaine, she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. There must have been a misunderstanding. Nathan cleared his throat. Disculpa-me. We didn't confirm you as a guest. He avoided my eyes, focusing instead on straightening a fork that was already perfectly aligned. The silence that followed was deafening. Stella's parents appeared in the doorway behind me, their arms full of gifts and wine bottles. Patricia's eyes darted between me and the table, quickly assessing the situation. Elaine, she nodded, squeezing past me. Just dropping by? 62 years old, and I stood there like a child who had shown up at the wrong birthday party. The beautiful house around me, with its vaulted ceilings and marble countertops, suddenly felt suffocating. I had sold my home of 30 years to help Nathan buy this place. A secret arrangement we had made when he and Stella fell in love with it but couldn't quite afford the down payment. Nathan said you'd be out of town visiting your sister, Stella said, not bothering to hide her annoyance anymore. My sister had been dead for 5 years. Nathan knew this. His eyes flickered with shame before he looked away. I must have confused the dates, I said quietly, though we all knew it was a lie. I set my gift, a hand-knitted throw I had spent months making, on the small entry table. The room felt like it was spinning. How many other family gatherings had happened here without me? How many dinners and celebrations had I missed because of confusion about dates? I should go, I whispered, digging through my purse as if looking for car keys, though they were already in my hand. What I was really searching for was something else. An envelope I had been carrying for weeks, unsure if I would ever have the courage to use it. As Stella called everyone to the table, I made a decision. While they were distracted settling into their seats, I slipped the envelope beneath the base of the flower arrangement. From the outside it looked like any greeting card. Inside were copies of bank statements, transfer records, and a deed, irrefutable proof that the $150,000 down payment for this house hadn't come from Stella's smart investments, as she had told everyone. It had come from me selling my home and emptying my retirement savings. I had kept this secret for 3 years at Nathan's request. It would hurt Stella's pride, he had explained. She wants her parents to think we did this on our own. I stepped out onto the porch, the spring air cool against my flushed face. Behind me I could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses. I walked to my car, a 10-year-old sedan that had replaced the newer model I'd sold along with my house. As I pulled away from the curb, I glanced back at the house one last time. The envelope would be discovered eventually, perhaps today, perhaps weeks from now when the flowers needed changing. Either way, the truth would finally come out. For the first time in years, the heaviness in my chest began to lift. I had spent my entire life putting Nathan first, working 2 jobs after his father died when he was just 7, postponing my own dreams of college, saving every penny to give him opportunities one never had. And somewhere along the way, after Stella entered our lives, I had become an afterthought, an inconvenience, the mother who didn't quite fit into their perfect image. The tears came as I drove, but they weren't entirely from sadness. There was something else there too, something that felt strangely like relief. The secret I had carried was no longer mine to bear. I didn't know what would happen next. Whether Nathan would be furious at my betrayal of confidence or heartbroken at the realization of how he had treated me. Whether Stella would find some way to twist this into another example of my interference. What I did know was that I was done being invisible. Done pretending that the small apartment I now lived in was my choice rather than my sacrifice. Done watching my son become someone who could forget his own mother on Mother's Day. As I turned onto the highway, heading back to my small apartment across town, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the faint stirring of possibility. What would life look like if I started living it for myself? 3 years ago, I stood in my garden for the last time. 30 years of memories lived in that soil. The rose bushes my late husband Robert had planted, the maple tree that had grown alongside Nathan, the stone pathway I had laid myself one summer. My home wasn't grand, but it was mine. Paid for. Secure. "You're sure about this, Mom?" Nathan had asked that day, his arm around my shoulder as the realtor hammered the sold sign into my front lawn. "Of course," I had answered, squeezing his hand. "It's just a house." But it wasn't just a house. It was my sanctuary after Robert died of a heart attack when Nathan was 7. It was where I'd sat up late grading papers during my years as a high school English teacher, taking on extra tutoring sessions to afford Nathan's college applications. It was where I'd nursed Nathan through chicken pox, mended his first broken heart, celebrated his college acceptance. The memory shifted to the day Nathan brought Stella home for the first time. She was beautiful, ambitious, and clearly enchanted with my son. I had been so happy for him. "She's getting her MBA," Nathan had told me proudly. "Her family owns that chain of furniture stores downtown." I made my famous pot roast that night. Stella picked at it, asking if the carrots were organic. Later, when Nathan left the room, she surveyed my modest living room with thinly veiled judgment. "Nathan said you were a teacher," she'd said. "Didn't they pay teachers anything back then?" I had laughed it off. Not enough to get rich, but enough to raise a wonderful son. 6 months later, Nathan and Stella were engaged. A month after that, they found the perfect house. A colonial-style home in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. The asking price, $750,000. "It's over our budget," Nathan had admitted when he called me, excitement in his voice. "But Stella says it's an investment in our future. Her parents are giving us some money for the wedding, but..." "But what, honey? The down payment is still $150,000. We have about half of that saved." I remembered the silence that followed. The way my chest tightened as I realized what he was asking without asking. "I could help," I had offered finally. "I've been thinking of downsizing anyway." The relief in his voice was palpable. "Really, Mom? You do that?" "Of course. But Nathan, shouldn't Stella's parents?" "No." He cut me off quickly. "Stella doesn't want them to know we needed help. She wants them to think we did this ourselves. So we made a deal. I would sell my home and contribute the majority of the proceeds toward their down payment. Nathan would gradually pay me back over the years, though we both knew that was unlikely. The only condition was that Stella would never know the money came from me. She's sensitive about these things, Mom, Nathan had explained. She wants us to build our life together without complications. I was the complication. After the sale of my house, I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. I told everyone it was because I wanted less maintenance, more freedom. In reality, it was all I could afford after giving Nathan and Stella nearly everything. At first, I was still included in their lives. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, occasional movies. Then the invitations became less frequent. Stella always had a reason. They were too busy, the house was being renovated, they had other plans. Nathan changed too. He began critiquing things he had never noticed before: my clothes. "Don't you have something more modern, Mom?" My opinions. "That's not how things work anymore." My cooking. "Stella says we're cutting back on carbs." Then came the comments about my negativity. "Stella thinks you're always looking for problems." Nathan told me once after I had expressed concern about a leak in their roof. "She says it stresses her out when you visit." I began second-guessing every word, every gesture. Was I being negative? Was I the problem? Last Christmas, I wasn't invited to their annual party. I saw the photos on Facebook. Their beautiful home filled with friends and Stella's family. When I asked Nathan about it, he said they thought I wouldn't enjoy it. "It was just a bunch of younger people, Mom. You wouldn't have known anyone." The final straw came 3 months ago. I ran into Patricia, Stella's mother, at the grocery store. Elaine. It's been ages. We missed you at Nathan and Stella's housewarming last week. My smile froze. Housewarming. For the sunroom edition. Stella designed it herself. Nathan said you were visiting your sister. My sister. Who had been dead for 5 years. That night, I pulled out the folder containing all the documentation of my financial contribution to their house. The transfer records. The agreement Nathan had signed. The emails where he had promised to always make me feel like it was still partly my home. For weeks I carried that envelope in my purse, unsure what to do with it. Until today. Mother's Day. When I arrived at a table with no place for me. As I sat in my apartment now, staring at the worn furniture that had fit in my smaller space, I wondered how long it would take for them to find the envelope. How long before the truth came out. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Sorry about today, Mom. Stella thought you knew it was just family this time. Just family. I placed the phone screen down on the coffee table and walked to the window. Outside, the world continued as always. People walking dogs, children playing, life moving forward. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a future shaped by my own desires, not by what Nathan and Stella expected of me, not by what I could sacrifice for them. I was 62 years old. How many years had I given away? How many more did I have left? I was halfway through my morning coffee when the phone rang. 3 times in the past hour. All from Nathan, all ignored. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. Not after yesterday. My small apartment felt peaceful this morning. Sunlight streamed through the curtains I'd sewn myself, falling across the second-hand furniture I'd carefully arranged to make this place feel like home. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No mortgage. No debts. Just a modest rent I could afford on my teacher's pension. The phone buzzed again. This time a text message. Mom, please pick up. It's important. I sighed, taking another sip of coffee. Whatever crisis had erupted at the Mother's Day lunch after I left, it wasn't my problem anymore. For once, I wasn't going to rush to smooth things over. Then came another text that made me nearly drop my mug. We found the envelope. What were you thinking? My heart pounded in my chest. So they had discovered it sooner rather than later. Part of me had hoped they wouldn't find it for days, giving me more time to prepare. But another part felt relieved. The truth was finally out. I set my phone down without responding and walked to the window. Across the street, a mother was teaching her young daughter to ride a bicycle, her hand steady on the child's back. How simple those days had been with Nathan. Before money and status and Stella had complicated everything. The phone rang again. This time it wasn't Nathan's name on the screen but Stella's. This was new. In 3 years, Stella had never once called me directly. Against my better judgment, I answered. How could you? Her voice was ice cold. Do you have any idea what you've done? I took a deep breath. Hello to you too, Stella. Don't play innocent. You deliberately humiliated me in front of my entire family. In the background, I could hear voices, her parents, I assumed, and Nathan trying to calm her down. That wasn't my intention, I said quietly. Then what exactly was your intention? She demanded. To make me look like I've been lying? To make Nathan choose between us? I just wanted the truth to come out. The truth. She laughed bitterly. The truth is that you couldn't stand to see Nathan happy without you controlling everything. You've always been jealous of me, of our success. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar wave of self-doubt. For years, I'd let comments like these make me question myself. Not today. Stella, I said firmly. I sold my home to help you buy yours. I gave up my retirement savings. And all I asked was to be treated with respect. We never asked for your money, she snapped. There was a sudden commotion on the other end, and then Nathan's voice came through. Mom. He sounded different, confused, angry, but something else too. Why did you do this? Why now? Because I wasn't even invited to Mother's Day lunch, Nathan. In the house I helped you buy. Silence. Then, we need to talk about this. In person. Yes, I agreed. We do. After hanging up, I sat down heavily on my sofa. The confrontation I'd avoided for years was finally happening. I should have felt terrified, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. Whatever happened next, the burden of secrecy was no longer mine to carry. 2 hours later, a sharp knock on my door announced their arrival. I opened it to find Nathan and Stella standing there, Nathan looking exhausted, Stella's eyes red from crying or rage, I couldn't tell which. I gestured for them to come in. They sat stiffly on my couch while I took the armchair across from them. The folder of documents lay on the coffee table between us. You promised, Nathan began, his voice low. You promised you would never tell her. And you promised I would always have a place in your life, I countered. That didn't seem to matter yesterday. Stella leaned forward. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? My parents think I've been lying to them for years. Haven't you? I asked simply. Her face flushed. That's different. I was protecting their feelings. They wanted to believe we could do this on our own. And what about my feelings, Stella? Did those matter to either of you? Nathan ran a hand through his hair. Mom, this isn't fair. You know how hard we've been working. The company is just starting to take off. The company I helped you start, I reminded him gently. Or did you forget that too? Another uncomfortable silence. The $20,000 I'd given Nathan to launch his marketing firm was another secret we'd kept from Stella. This isn't about money, I continued. This is about respect. About family. About not being treated like an inconvenience. We never, Nathan began, but Stella cut him off. What do you want, Elaine? What's your endgame here? Money. More control over our lives. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And saw the fear behind her anger. She had built her entire identity around the narrative of being self-made, independent. My existence threatened that story. I don't want anything, I said finally, except acknowledgement, honesty, and to be treated like I matter. Nathan looked down at his hands. You do matter, Mom. Do I? I asked. Because yesterday told a different story. Stella stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We didn't come here to be guilt-tripped. Why did you come then? I asked. To ask you to fix this, she exclaimed. Call my parents. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them. No, I said simply. The single word hung in the air between us. It might have been the first time I'd ever directly refused her. Nathan looked up surprised. Stella stared at me in disbelief. What did you say? She whispered. I said no. I won't lie anymore. Not for you, not for anyone. For the first time since I'd known her, Stella seemed at a loss for words. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, pausing only to shoot a glare at Nathan. Are you coming? Nathan hesitated, looking between us. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the pull of loyalties. Go, I said softly. But think about what happens next, Nathan. Really think about it. After a moment's hesitation, he followed Stella out the door. As it closed behind them, I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling slightly. I had no idea what would happen next. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without apology. And it felt like the first breath after a long time underwater. The week after Mother's Day passed in a haze of unanswered calls and sleepless nights. Nathan left voicemails that oscillated between anger and pleading. Stella sent a single text. You've ruined everything, followed by silence. But the most surprising messages came from Patricia, Stella's mother. Elaine, we need to talk. Please call me. I didn't. Not yet. I needed time to gather my strength, to understand what I wanted from all of this. For so long, my only goal had been to keep Nathan happy, even at my own expense. Now, I wasn't sure what I wanted except perhaps the dignity of truth. On Friday morning, a knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find Nathan standing there, looking haggard and worn. No Stella this time. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside, letting him enter. He stood awkwardly in my small living room, eyes darting around as if seeing it for the first time, the faded furniture, the cramped kitchen, the narrow hallway leading to my bedroom, the visible evidence of what I had given up. You're really living like this, he said, more to himself than to me. It's comfortable enough, I replied, gesturing for him to sit. Tea. He shook his head. Mom, everything's falling apart. I sat across from him, waiting. He needed to speak, and for once I wasn't going to rush to fix his problems. Stella and I had a huge fight, he continued, staring at his hands. She says I betrayed her by keeping this from her. That I made her look like a fool in front of her parents. And what do you think? I asked. He looked up, surprised by the question. I don't know. I thought we were doing the right thing at the time. You offered to help and we needed it, and... He trailed off, then added softly, I never thought about what it cost you. It wasn't just the money, Nathan. I know that now. He ran a hand through his hair. Her parents are furious. Not with you, with us. With her. Patricia keeps saying they raised her better than to accept such a sacrifice without even a thank you. I nodded slowly. Patricia seems like a sensible woman. She wants to meet with you. To apologize, I think. And Stella. Nathan's expression darkened. Stella thinks you did this on purpose. To drive a wedge between us. Between her and her family. Is that what you think? He was quiet for a long moment. No. I think you finally got tired of being treated like you didn't matter. The simple truth of his words brought tears to my eyes. I blinked them away, unwilling to fall back into the familiar pattern of emotional vulnerability that always led to me compromising my own needs. You've changed, he said, studying my face. No, I corrected him. I've remembered who I was before I started pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Nathan looked down again. I've been a terrible son, haven't I? I considered his question carefully. You've been a son who forgot to see his mother as a person, with feelings and needs and a life of her own. I want to fix this, he said urgently. Tell me how to fix this. Once those words would have been all I needed to forgive everything. To rush in with reassurances and comfort. To make his pain mine to solve. Not anymore. I don't think it's that simple, Nathan. What do you mean? I mean that trust, once broken, doesn't mend with just an apology. Takes time. Consistency. Real change. He nodded slowly, the reality of the situation settling on his shoulders. So what happens now? Now, I said. I focus on rebuilding my life. And you need to decide what kind of man you want to be. What kind of relationship you want with me. With Stella. With yourself. And if Stella can't accept that, she's my wife, Mom. Then that's a choice you'll have to make, I said gently. But it's your choice, Nathan. Not mine. Not hers. Yours. After he left, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, processing our conversation. For the first time, I felt like Nathan had really seen me. Not just as his mother, but as Elaine. A woman who had given up everything for him and received precious little in return. My phone rang. Patricia again. This time I answered. Elaine, she said, her voice warm but tinged with embarrassment. Thank you for picking up. Hello, Patricia. I owe you an apology, she continued. We had no idea about the house, about how you've been treated. James and I are... Well, we're horrified, frankly. I closed my eyes, suddenly tired. It's not your fault. No, but it is my daughter's. And she was raised better than this. Patricia paused. Would you be willing to meet for lunch? Just us. There are things I'd like to say in person. I hesitated. I'm not interested in being in the middle of a family dispute, Patricia. This isn't about that, she assured me. This is about acknowledging what you did for my daughter and grandson. About making things right, if that's even possible. After we hung up, I walked to my bedroom and stood before the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the one who had driven away from Nathan and Stella's house on Mother's Day. There was a steadiness in her eyes now. A quiet resolve. That evening my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Davidson, this is Tyler from Davidson Marketing. I'm reaching out because we're looking for an office manager with teaching experience for our educational clients. Nathan suggested you might be interested. Formal invitation to follow. I stared at the message, understanding immediately what Nathan was trying to do. Offering me a job at his company, a company I had helped finance, was his way of making amends, of bringing me back into his life on terms he could control. The old Elaine would have been grateful for the opportunity, would have accepted immediately, pathetically eager to be needed. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I set my phone down without responding and walked to my small desk in the corner of the living room. On it sat a stack of brochures from the community college course catalogs for the upcoming semester. Classes in literature, creative writing, art history. All the subjects I'd loved during my teaching years but had never had time to explore for myself. For the first time in decades, my future belonged to me. Not to Nathan. Not to memories of the past. Not to expectations of what a mother should sacrifice. To me alone. Elaine, have you considered the poetry workshop? I think you'd be brilliant at it. I looked up from my registration form to see Margaret, the community college advisor, smiling encouragingly at me. We'd spent the past hour discussing course options for the fall semester. At 62, I was far from the typical student, but Margaret had treated my educational aspirations with genuine enthusiasm. Poetry. I hesitated. I haven't written a poem since high school. Which means you're due, she replied with a wink. I added the workshop to my list, Creative Writing 101, Introduction to Art History, and now Contemporary Poetry. 3 courses that had nothing to do with anyone's expectations but my own. 2 months had passed since Mother's Day. 2 months of rediscovering myself piece by piece. The lunch with Patricia had been surprisingly healing. Unlike her daughter, she had been horrified by my financial sacrifice and the subsequent treatment I'd received. James and I raised Stella to be better than this, she had said, genuine regret in her eyes. We thought we were teaching her ambition, not selfishness. Patricia and I had met for coffee several times since then, an unexpected friendship blooming from the wreckage of family secrets. Through her, I learned that Nathan and Stella were in couples counseling, trying to repair the fractures in their marriage. Stella still blamed me for interfering, but her parents' disappointment had forced her to at least pretend to reflect on her actions. Nathan had been persistent in his attempts to reconnect. Weekly calls. Occasional texts. Once flowers delivered to my door with a simple note. I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand. I've been careful not to rush back into our old patterns. Each interaction was measured, deliberate. I answered his calls but kept conversations brief. I acknowledged his messages but didn't immediately respond to his needs. Small boundaries that felt like mountains to me. Mom, could we have dinner this week? Nathan had asked during our last call. Just us. I'd agreed, setting the date for tomorrow evening. My first visit back to the house since Mother's Day. I wasn't sure how I'd feel, seeing the space that my sacrifice had helped create. But it was time to find out. Leaving the community college, I drove to my favorite coffee shop. Another new habit I'd developed. Once I would have considered such indulgences wasteful. Now I understood they were investments in my own well-being. The usual Elaine? Called Mario, the barista who had somehow memorized my order after just a few visits. Yes, please. As I waited for my coffee, I noticed a familiar face at a corner table. James, Patricia's husband and Stella's father. He looked up, recognized me and waved me over. Elaine, he greeted warmly, standing as I approached. Please join me. I hesitated briefly before sitting down. James and I had never spoken one-on-one before. Patricia mentioned you might be here, he explained. I hope you don't mind the ambush. Not at all, I said, though I was curious about his motives. James was a successful businessman, with a confident demeanor to match. But today he seemed almost nervous. I wanted to speak with you privately, he began. About the house situation. I tensed slightly. I think everything that needs to be said has been said, James. He shook his head. Not by me. He pulled out a checkbook from his jacket pocket. I want to reimburse you. For the down payment with interest. I stared at him in surprise. That's not necessary. It is to me, he insisted. My daughter accepted a gift she had no right to take, let alone conceal. Our family doesn't operate that way. I didn't reveal the truth for money, I said quietly. James studied me thoughtfully. No, I don't believe you did. But this isn't about why you told us. It's about making things right. I considered his offer. The money would certainly help. My teacher's pension was adequate but not generous. The extra funds could make my newfound educational pursuits easier, perhaps even allow for the small trips I'd always dreamed of taking. But something didn't feel right. I appreciate the gesture, James. Truly. But I think this is between Nathan and me. He's offered to repay you? He has, I acknowledged. I've asked him to wait. I need our relationship to heal first, before money complicates things again. James nodded slowly, returning the checkbook to his pocket. You're a remarkable woman, Elaine. I wish we'd gotten to know you sooner. So do I. As I left the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Looking forward to tomorrow. I'm cooking, so prepare yourself. Love you. The casual love you, something he hadn't included in his messages for months, made me smile despite myself. Tomorrow would be a test for both of us. A chance to see if the foundation of our relationship could be rebuilt, stronger and more honest than before. At home, I opened my closet and surveyed my options for dinner. In the past, I would have chosen something unobtrusive, something that wouldn't draw Stella's critical eye. Now I pulled out a vibrant blue dress I'd purchased recently. A color I'd always loved but had stopped wearing years ago when Stella commented that it was a bit much for someone your age. As I held it up against myself in the mirror, I hardly recognized the woman looking back. Not because she looked so different physically, but because of the quiet confidence in her eyes. The woman who had driven away from Nathan's house on Mother's Day had been shattered, humiliated. This woman stood tall, secure in the knowledge of her own worth. Tomorrow I would see Nathan. I would walk into the house my sacrifice had helped build. But I would do so not as a forgotten mother desperate for scraps of attention, but as Elaine Davidson. A woman rediscovering her voice, her dreams, and her power. And no matter what happened with Nathan and Stella, that woman would remain. I stood on the familiar doorstep, the weight of memory heavy on my shoulders. The last time I'd been here, Mother's Day, I'd left humiliated and invisible. Today, dressed in my blue dress with a small bouquet of daisies from my window box, I was determined to enter differently. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Nathan stood there, wiping his hands on a dish towel, a tentative smile on his face. "Mom," he said softly, "you look beautiful." "Thank you." I handed him the daisies. "From my garden." "Well, my windowsill garden." He took them carefully. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." I stepped inside, bracing myself for the flood of emotions. The house was just as stunning as I remembered: soaring ceilings, gleaming hardwood floors, the elegant staircase leading to the second floor. But something was different. It took me a moment to place it. "You redecorated," I observed. Nathan glanced around. "Just a few things. The dining room especially." He led me through to the dining area and I stopped short. The formal dining set that Stella had chosen, all crystal and chrome and uncomfortable chairs, was gone. In its place stood a warm wooden table with comfortable chairs. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized it. "That's my old dining table," I whispered. "From the house." Nathan nodded. "I found it in storage." "I hope that's okay." The table where I had helped Nathan with homework for years. Where we'd shared meals and dreams and tears after his father died. Where I'd taught him to play cards and make paper airplanes on rainy days. "When did you do this?" I asked, running my hand along the familiar wood grain. "Last week." He hesitated. "After Stella moved out." I looked up sharply. "What?" Nathan sighed, gesturing for me to sit. "We're separated. Have been for about a month now." "Nathan, I never wanted." "It wasn't just about you, Mom," he interrupted gently. "What happened on Mother's Day? It forced me to see things I've been ignoring for years. Not just how we treated you, but how Stella and I functioned as a couple. The secrets, the pretense, the constant pressure to maintain appearances." I sat down, feeling the solid support of my old chair beneath me. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He moved to the kitchen, returning with 2 glasses of wine. "For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Like I'm becoming the person I used to be before." He trailed off. "Before Stella?" I supplied. "Before I started valuing the wrong things," he corrected. "Before I forgot what really matters." We sipped our wine in comfortable silence for a moment. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see a pot simmering on the stove. "What are you making?" I asked. "Your beef stew," he replied with a small smile. "I found your recipe card in the box with the photo albums." Another piece of our past reclaimed. As we ate dinner, Nathan filled me in on the changes in his life. He and Stella were trying therapy, but he wasn't optimistic about reconciliation. His company was doing well, but he'd stopped chasing clients who only added stress and status rather than satisfaction. He'd reconnected with old friends from before his marriage, people Stella had deemed not our kind. "And what about you?" he asked eventually. "Mom, I've been talking nonstop. Tell me about your life." So I did. I told him about my classes at the community college, about my new friendship with Patricia, about the small writing group I joined at the local library. As I spoke, I watched his expression shift from surprise to genuine interest to something that looked like pride. "You seem different," he said finally. "Happier." "I am," I admitted. "It's strange, but losing everything that day, my place in your life, the secret I've been keeping, it somehow gave me permission to start over, to figure out who I am when I'm not just being your mother." "You never stopped being my mother," Nathan said quietly. "I just stopped being a good son." After dinner, we moved to the living room with coffee. The weight that had sat on my chest for years had lightened, but there were still things that needed to be said. "Nathan," I began carefully, "what happens now? With us?" He set his cup down. "That depends on you, Mom. I want you back in my life. Really in it, not just on the periphery. But I understand if you need more time, more space. And if Stella comes back?" His expression turned serious. "Then she accepts you as part of the package or it doesn't work. I've been clear about that." I nodded slowly, believing him. "I'd like to try. To build something new between us. Something healthier." "I'd like that too." As the evening drew to a close, Nathan walked me to my car. The summer air was warm, filled with the scent of jasmine from the garden beds lining the driveway. Beds I now noticed were newly planted with the same flowers I'd grown at my old house. "Will you come again next week?" Nathan asked. "Maybe we could cook together. Like we used to." "I'd like that," I said. "But not on Thursday. I have my poetry workshop." He smiled. "Poetry? That's new. I'm full of surprises these days." He hugged me goodbye, holding on a moment longer than usual. "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember how to show it." "I love you too, Nathan." As I drove home to my small apartment, I felt a profound sense of peace. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. Not because all wounds were healed. They weren't. But because for the first time in decades I was living authentically, making choices based on my own needs rather than everyone else's expectations. The next morning I woke early and made coffee, settling at my small desk by the window. My poetry assignment lay before me. Write about a moment of transformation. My pen hovered over the blank page for only a moment before the words began to flow. 3 months later, my apartment was filled with morning light as I prepared for the day ahead. My poetry professor had selected my work for the department's fall showcase. Nathan was bringing Patricia and James to the reading. Afterward, we planned to have dinner at my place. A small gathering around the card table I'd found at a second-hand shop, not unlike the family dinners of my past, but fundamentally different in one crucial way. This time I wasn't the afterthought. I was the heart of it all. As I gathered my manuscript pages, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Proud of you, Mom. Can't wait for tonight." I smiled, slipping the phone into my purse. The Mother's Day when I'd been excluded from the table had been painful, even devastating. But it had also been necessary, the catalyst for change, for growth, for reclaiming the woman I'd almost forgotten I could be. Elaine Davidson. Mother, yes. But also poet, student, friend, and finally, after all these years, the author of her own story.